Stage 3 of a familiar financial cycle has returned, one that has repeated itself for more than 3,000 years. Throughout history, 3 major global reserve currencies have risen and fallen, and every one of them followed the same 4-stage pattern before collapsing. Today, the US dollar has dropped to its lowest level in 5 years. Silver prices have doubled, and the same signals we're seeing now once appeared in ancient Rome, Imperial Spain, and the British Empire. All of them moved into stage 4, the final phase, where the entire system breaks down. In this moment, we're watching the same script play out again, and now we're going to break down exactly where this leads. Stay with me. Here's what most people miss about the dollar falling to 98.96. It isn't just a statistic. It's a warning sign. When the world's reserve currency drops 7% in a year, falls for 9 days straight, and silver jumps 84% to $58.62, it signals something deeper than market noise. It points to a cycle that has repeated for thousands of years and has ended the same way every single time. Every reserve currency follows a 4-stage pattern. Stage 1 is strength, real production, real industry, real value. That's how Rome, Spain, Britain, and later America built trust in their money. Stage 2 begins when the leading nation realizes it can print freely because the world still accepts its currency. Then comes stage 3, crisis and loss of control. That's where we are now. And stage 4 is the final outcome, full breakdown. The current surge in silver isn't just a bullish trend. It's a signal that the system is under stress. Understanding this pattern is the key to seeing what comes next. When a nation's currency becomes the world's reserve, everyone holds it, trusts it, and relies on it. That confidence lets the dominant country spend far beyond its means, financing wars, expansion, and endless social programs. At first, nothing seems wrong because the world keeps accepting the currency, even as its value quietly weakens. It feels like prosperity, but it's actually slow, hidden damage. Stage 3 begins when the math can't be ignored. Debt becomes unmanageable, deficits explode, and money creation accelerates just to keep the system afloat. Other countries notice. They reduce their exposure, shift into gold and silver, and the pace of decline speeds up. What was slow erosion becomes rapid devaluation. Central banks attempt to step in, but every fix backfires because the core issue is trust. Then comes stage 4. A sharp collapse or major devaluation. Paper wealth disappears, real assets surge, and global power realigns. This phase moves quickly, often in months, because once confidence breaks, the system unwinds fast. History has followed this script repeatedly. Rome, Spain, and Britain all went through the same 4 stages, and all ended the same way. Watch how clearly each empire moves through the same 4-stage cycle. Rome is the simplest example. In stage 1, the denarius is 95% silver and trusted everywhere. In stage 2, Rome overspends on its military and slowly dilutes the coin. 95% drops to 90, 80, then 50. Trade continues only because there's no alternative. By stage 3, the denarius contains just 5% silver. Prices explode hundreds of times over, and even soldiers refuse payment in currency that no longer holds value. Rome prints more to survive, which only accelerates the collapse. Stage 4 arrives with the fall of the empire in 476 AD, and Europe slips into centuries of barter. The world's reserve currency disappears. Spain follows the same script. In the 1500s, New World gold and silver make the Spanish real the dominant global currency. But Spain produces little and imports nearly everything. Inflation surges, Silver supplies shrink, and other nations outproduce them. Spain devalues repeatedly and defaults 7 times in 70 years. By the mid-1600s, the real has lost global trust, and financial power shifts to Amsterdam and London. Britain's rise and fall follows the same 4-stage cycle. At its peak, Britain dominates global industry, and the gold-backed pound becomes the world's most trusted currency. But World War I forces Britain into massive borrowing and money printing. Debt multiplies tenfold in just 5 years. Attempts to return to the old gold standard fail because the money supply has expanded too far, and the country is draining its gold reserves. Meanwhile, the U.S. has become the world's true industrial and financial powerhouse. By 1931, Britain abandons the gold standard, the pound drops sharply, and global confidence collapses. World War II delivers the final blow. In 1944, Bretton Woods makes it official. The U.S. dollar replaces the pound as the world's reserve currency. America then follows the same cycle. After World War II, the U.S. controls half of global GDP, produces more than any other nation, and backs the dollar with gold at $35 an ounce. Trust is absolute. In 1971, convertibility ends, and the dollar becomes pure fiat. Government spending accelerates. Wars, global military presence, large social programs, and debt begins its long climb from $370 billion to $36 trillion. The money supply expands from hundreds of billions to tens of trillions. The dollar remains dominant only because global trade, especially oil, is priced in dollars. But the imbalance keeps growing. Today, with $36 trillion in federal debt and over $130 trillion in unfunded promises, the system has entered stage 3, the point where the math can no longer be ignored. These numbers aren't theoretical. They're real obligations the government can't cover through taxes or growth. The math no longer works. That's why the Federal Reserve is cutting rates and adding liquidity, trying to keep the system steady. But the world is no longer cooperating. Major nations are actively moving away from the dollar. China has cut its U.S. Treasury holdings nearly in half since 2013. Russia already exited the dollar system. Saudi Arabia now accepts yuan for oil. BRICS countries are building their own payment networks. Central banks are buying gold at record levels, over 800 tons in the first half of 2025 alone. And silver is sounding the alarm. Prices have surged from $28.92 to $58.62 this year, an 84% jump. Industrial demand is soaring while supply keeps shrinking. Investors are rushing into metal as confidence in fiat weakens. ETFs are adding massive inflows, and inventories in Shanghai are at decade lows. Meanwhile, the dollar index has dropped to 98.96, down 7% this year, with 9 straight days of decline. Even weaker currencies are rising against the dollar. The pattern is speeding up. The Fed is boxed in. Rate cuts weaken the dollar and reignite inflation. High rates make the national debt unmanageable and risk recession. Every path leads to pressure, and none of them restore trust. Confidence is slipping, and once that happens, the cycle moves quickly into its final stage. Markets now expect an 80% chance of a rate cut on December 10th, which means more pressure on the dollar and more inflation. This is classic stage 3 behavior. Many assume America is immune because of its military strength, technology, and economic size. But Rome had unmatched military power. Spain held the largest empire of its time. Britain ruled a quarter of the world. None of it stopped their reserve currencies from losing value. Power doesn't override economic reality, and no nation escapes the pattern once stage 3 begins. Stage 4 doesn't mean the dollar suddenly collapses, but it does mean the U.S. will eventually lose reserve currency status, likely within the next decade, and almost certainly within two. When that happens, inflation returns in force. Interest rates rise. The government can't borrow cheaply. Spending cuts become unavoidable. Living standards fall for anyone holding dollar-based assets or relying on fixed income. Wealth doesn't disappear in a currency crisis, it moves. When confidence breaks, real assets surge, while paper assets lose purchasing power. This pattern played out in Rome, Spain, and Britain, and it's the same dynamic unfolding now. If you understand the cycle, the goal is simple. Reduce your dependence on the dollar and hold assets that hold value when currency weakens. This isn't financial advice, but here's the general logic. Physical gold and silver protect purchasing power because they don't rely on financial institutions or counterparty promises. Silver, in particular, tends to move faster than gold during currency stress because it has both industrial demand and monetary demand. In past crises, silver has shown explosive gains. Productive assets also matter: farmland, energy, and resources that generate real value, regardless of what happens to the currency. Limiting unnecessary debt can help too, because rising interest rates can turn manageable loans into dangerous liabilities. This shift won't happen overnight. There will be rallies in the dollar and pullbacks in metals, but the broader direction is set. The dollar's recent slide and silver's breakout aren't random market moves. They're early signs of a system under strain. Stage 4 is approaching, and understanding it now gives you time to prepare.